Hello, friends. Welcome to Calligraphy Tips with Lindsay. Today, we're looking at my favorite white ink, Dr. Martin's Bleedproof White. Bleedproof White is a bit unique as far as calligraphy inks go. It's a highly opaque watercolor intended for use as a correction and highlighting fluid for graphic design, cartooning, and drafting needs. The same qualities and excellent opacity that make it great for cartooning and illustration also make it arguably the best choice for white calligraphy with a pointed pen. Bleedproof white comes in small glass jars in a thick, pasty consistency that's a bit thixotropic, so it gets more fluid as you mix it. Daler-Rowney offers a very similar product, Pro White, that isn't as widely used by calligraphers, but, in my experience, it works just as well and is interchangeable with the Dr. Martin's White. Daler-Rowney also offers an ink specifically labeled as Bleedproof White as part of their Luma ink line, but I haven't tried it. If you have, let me know in the comments what you think of it. In order to use Bleedproof White with pointed pen nibs, it must be thinned. I prefer to do this in a separate container to reduce the chances of introducing mold or any kind of contaminant into my main supply. I use Bleedproof White fairly often, so I keep a supply of it mixed up in a 1-ounce dinky dip jar. To mix a fresh batch, I scoop a small amount of full-strength ink into my jar. I like to use the staff end of an old plastic nib holder to do this, but a clean brush will work just as well. I add enough water to the jar to submerge the ink I've scooped in, and then I mix it thoroughly. I like to keep little jars with droppers filled with water, but you can also use a pipette. The thinned mixture should be about the consistency of whole milk or cream, and it will bead up nicely on non-porous surfaces like it's doing here on my plastic nib holder. It should flow freely, but not be so thin that it loses some of its opacity and starts to look cloudy instead of solid white. The ratio of ink to water is pretty forgiving, so you don't need to worry too much about getting the mix exactly right or the same every time. Just mix it up, give it a quick test, and then adjust if needed by adding a little more ink or a little more water. Remember, it's always easier to add more water and make ink thinner than it is to make ink thicker again. So, it's best to err on the side of caution and add your water slowly when mixing. Once thinned, bleedproof white is capable of producing incredibly fine hairlines and fully opaque, shaded strokes over any color of paper. There's really nothing like it, and you can tint it with traditional gouache or watercolor paint to get a subtle range of pastel hues. There are two important things to keep in mind when using bleedproof white. It is not waterproof, and if you thin it too much, the reduced proportion of binder in the mix can leave it prone to cracking or coming off the page in powdery smudges once dry. For me, the benefits far outweigh these two limitations, and I use bleedproof white for just about everything when I want a really high impact, sharp white ink. Have you come across bleedproof white in your calligraphy journey yet? If so, what are your thoughts on it? Is it a favorite? Let me know in the comments. I hope you found today's tip helpful and will join me again for future calligraphy tips with Lindsey. As always, thank you for watching.